Nice. All right. So, welcome. Episode 3 of the Uncommon Sense podcast. I'm your host, Blake. Today with me, I have a very special friend, someone who's inspired me to do a lot of things that I was uncomfortable in doing. He is the co-creator of La Burger Week, I believe.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah, that is
co-creator
right.
of La Burger Week, Poutine Week as well, I believe is you. Yeah, Poutine Week as well. Someone who, when I have any questions about business, marketing, or anything of that nature, I go to this guy, my friend, super smart human being, Mr. Naeem Adam. Welcome, buddy.
Thanks. I saw that you used the word smart and not clever. I remember, that you had a difference between the two, and I'm definitely more smart and clever because I get in trouble.
There's a little bit of difference. The thing is that usually you are the smartest guy in the room very often.
No.
I don't think you know it, but I think a lot of the time you are the smartest guy in the room.
That's a problem then, because I thrive on trying to be the dumbest person in the room, which then that makes me the smartest if you think about it well enough.
That's it. Yeah, because you're willing to understand and listen to everybody. So So today, I called this episode the Burnout because I wanted to talk about professional burnout. I wanted to talk about for all those people who are striving hard, especially now where a lot of people are having to rethink their careers, rethink their livelihood. I think a lot of people are putting their nose to the grindstone and really working hard. And I think something that we will see in the coming months to the next couple of years is a lot of people who are trying to rebuild their lives are going to be suffering from some serious professional burnout. And I know this is something that you and me have talked to personally and that we've kind of discussed. And I couldn't think of any other person better to really delve into this topic than obviously you. So, So I wanted to start off. Can we talk about when you kind of felt like you got to that, like when you started to feel like your professional life was picking up to a point to maybe where you felt like it was getting not out of control, but where you felt it was starting to become like very consuming in your life?
Well, I think that that anything to do with burnout or overwhelmingness around whatever you have going on, anxiety, are sometimes not things that you can see very clearly when you're in it. When you're just in it, you just feel like, oh, I'm really busy, and you're just kind of like doing a whole bunch of stuff, and you feel like it is a passage that you need to take in order to achieve something great. So for me to realize when I had it was really much later than I wish I knew. And it's not something that just comes and hits you like a wall. It kind of creeps up slowly. And I also believe that everyone has a different kind of experience around it. And, it needs to be something that you can reflect on and be able to see from a distance, but it takes a certain kind of mindfulness to be able to have that self-reflection and to see it coming. And I only figured that out much later. I mean, while you and I, Blake, we were working out for a few years, and I at times I felt like I was on top of my game, physically, mentally, but at the same time, this was still creeping on, and I didn't see it come until much later. And I got some help. I started talking to people about it. At first, I started opening up to people like you, Blake, and others that are close to me. And that's when I started to kind of notice that, like, hey, I think I need to like check myself on this right now and make sure I take care of myself.
Okay, good. Yeah, and so because I remember like when we would talk, you'd feel like I don't want like it seemed like the responsibilities that you were taking on. And I remember we had one specific conversation one morning where you were talking about trying to delegate tasks to other people to get stuff done. But you felt like you really couldn't let go of delegating those tasks because you felt like there was no one who could do it as well as you could do it. So you felt like you were doing everything you were supposed to do, plus what other people were supposed to be doing, plus whatever you felt need to move you forward at the same time.
Yeah. There's a lot of hats that you end up wearing when you kind of take my career path. So let's go like a little back and give some context.
Yeah.
So let's say we're about 2-3 years ago now. I've been launching and doing these festivals for nearly 10 years as of today. And they've been going great. They've been like a great source of income. They've been growing as we go. Our team has been growing, and my partner and I have gone through up and downs, but like mainly we've been riding a wave with this, and we appreciate each other and work really well together. Then at some point, of course, I have like my own aspirations to kind of do things myself, and like I wanted to develop some new stuff and work on things, and you get this like fire and this passion that's inside of you.
Right.
And what happens if you can't, and then, so while having that fire, I also was working for a company that I look up to quite a lot, and it's a payments company. They hired me to launch an app, a delivery app for them in Montreal, and it was like the most phenomenal challenge I've had to date. I was working really closely with a lot of like, successful business people that were coaching me, even if they didn't know they were. And then this fire that I had, and you just try to manage all of these things. And then you got like the family at home. My wife is also a businesswoman, and she's got her stuff. She's got her fire, and trying to just kind of balance all those things out was starting to become like overwhelming, and for me personally, it's the loss of power that I was getting, or that the loss of power that was putting me in trouble, let's say. Like, so with the festivals, I wasn't able to like grab it as hard as I wanted to and do what I wanted to do with it, because my time was split with this other job. And this other job, which it's not something I do. I don't take jobs. I haven't taken, like, I don't work for anybody but myself.
Right.
Like for as long as I can remember. And this was an opportunity that I thought I could learn from. And but I didn't have control. I didn't have control. People were telling me what to do, even if I felt like it wasn't necessarily the right thing to do. And so all of those things started to become really challenging for me, not having control over my own life. I was losing that. And, there was nothing that I had control over at one point. And I was lost at that, So when it came to getting people to help me without having this kind of control over what's going on in my life, it was hard for me to get others to do what I needed, because I didn't know what they needed. So back then I was talking to you and I'm saying, hey man, all these people, they can't do their stuff. They're not doing it properly. I have to do the work for them. No, I'm the only one who can do it well enough. In retrospect, it's not true. In retrospect is that I was lacking this control over my life and my careers, that I was trying to take it anywhere I could. And I was spinning that story and saying stuff like, that person can't do the work, I gotta do it. So then I had that little piece of control. But in reality, they could have done that job better than I could have. And so that's the difference between you going through something and not realizing it, and your perspective of the world. And then after the fact, you're able to do some self-reflection, and you see, okay, the perceptions I had of other people, of my life, the lack of power that I was missing in terms of controlling my life, is all different. It flips on you.
Right.
So that's kind of how I see it today. And if I could go back, a lot of those people that maybe I pissed off or pushed, or made feel bad for their work, I wish I can kind of go back and kind of apologize to them,
Right. Yeah.
because it wasn't them that was in the wrong. It was more me. And
Right.
I see the same thing with like even my son, like a lot of times, like just on a side note, like he'll be acting out. He's 5 years old, so he's a 5-year-old boy. He started kindergarten. He'll be acting out. He won't be eating, and then we'll blame things like, okay, well, he needs more discipline,
Mm-hmm.
and then I'll try that route, but we just digress. It doesn't work. Or we're gonna have to take him to a nutritionist. Like he's no energy, he doesn't eat. In the end, it's not him. It's me.
Yeah.
You self-reflect. You take a step back. You take a look, and you say, okay, well, of course, like I'm on my phone while we're eating. Like he says he wants to watch TV. I'm like, yeah, go watch. I'm tired.
Mm-hmm.
Next thing you know, he's getting withdrawal symptom because I switched it off abruptly to get him to eat. Like, you know.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like that in a way, and it's not his fault. It was my fault. I did the self-reflection. I started putting love in the center of it. Put my phone down, pay attention to him, give him time, and all of a sudden, he starts to turn into this, perfect kid.
That's yeah.
So it's the same thing with working with people and stuff.
Yeah, and that's something that I can also attest to, is that I've noticed, especially being, I think it's been difficult for everybody in quarantine, especially being a parent, is because you are kind of looking for that like 20 seconds of where you can kind of just disconnect yourself and just, I don't know, get your brain out of it. But you realize as you're sitting at home and you're with your kid, and you kind of don't realize all the influences of everything you do, how it influences your kid, and how they pick up on everything. Because we had the same issue with my little girl, is when I look at my phone because I get a message or something pops up and I pay attention to it, right away you could see within a couple of minutes they start to act out. If it's something they know that's going to bug you, or if it's something that they know is going to get automatic attention, they'll do something they know they're not supposed to do. But it's because they're trying to interact with you, and when they know that there's something else that's taking your time away from them, they automatically know how to get you to reaffirm, even though you're like, why are you doing that? You're not supposed to do it.
Yeah.
But when you sit back and look at it, you're like, oh, it's because I'm not. It's because I'm not present. I'm not here.
Yeah.
I'm not focusing on what's going on.
It's all they want, and is for you to be there. And so for me, and this is different, it's got to be different for everybody, but like a great sign of me being in a good place is the ability to kind of like put the phone away, for a couple of hours, man. Like he comes home at like 5 o'clock, he goes to bed at 8. Like, what's 3 hours? Why do I need my phone at that time? Put it away, kind of work with him. And this does relate to anxiety, burnout, like all these like issues, because it's where you're most comfortable that you start to realize where you kind of let loose. Like, for example, and become yourself, and that's where you see the real reflection of who you become at that point. So for example, when I was going into this office, I was like decked to the nines. I was confident. I had all, like, I was ready to, but that was a persona that I was putting on.
Right.
Because I was there. It was just in this place of public. When I came home, I started becoming someone else. And I was letting my anxiety take the best of me. I was letting my burnout take the best of me, and it was affecting my family. And so and I said, okay, well, like that's my reality. I got to fix this. And so once I started working on myself at home, that's when I started to realize how was I probably affecting people at work and around me. And then, started working on myself, fixing myself, or finding ways to maintain, to kind of go by.
Right. And how did you find that it affected your home life? Like, did you find like your relationship, like, with your wife changed a bit? Did you find that like it was making you a little more irritable? Because I know, like, personally for myself, like when I feel like I'm starting to get like some kind of burnout, everybody gets burnout at some level.
Mm-hmm.
I find that I'm unfairly short. Like if
Mm-hmm.
there's things that I'm like, oh, you should know this or something like that, like
Mm-hmm.
uh, I'm I'm just like I'm real
Mm-hmm.
pissy. And it's like I try to catch myself, and I'm luckily with somebody who always calls me out on my shit.
Mm-hmm.
So whenever I am like that, she'll be like, dude,
Mm-hmm.
like what's your problem? And then I'll be like,
Mm-hmm.
okay, sorry, I'm being a dickhead, it's my
Mm-hmm.
fault, I'm sorry. But how was it for you, like when you're going through this? Like, did you
Mm-hmm.
feel like, was it really affecting the home life? How was it like kind of changing things?
Yeah. Well, listen, like, my wife is pretty, like, my wife is super soft and gentle, and she's loving, caring, very spiritual person, but she's extremely confident, and she knows what she wants and what she doesn't want, and
Right.
she's definitely a boss, you know.
She
Um,
definitely is,
yeah,
100%.
there's no way she is ever going to let me act out and get away with it.
Hmm.
So doing that wasn't like an option. Like there was no way I was gonna come home and start being mean to people, and then my wife and my son just being like, "Oh, daddy's mean," like,
Yeah.
like probably how we were with our dads, like back in the day. Like, our dad
Right.
came home all pissed off, and you're just like, "Well, that's
Like, oh,
daddy."
go to the other side of the house, we're out of here.
Yeah, they don't know. Like my wife's like, "Hey, do that again, this is
Yeah.
over,"
Fair. Yeah. That's it.
So what happened, and this is something I realized afterwards too, and one of the triggers that I noticed about where I was like kind of channeling all this anxiety and burnout emotion was, I guess, an addiction I created, or that I kind of went into.
Hmm.
I don't know what you call it, indulged in. And at the time, I didn't think of it as an addiction at all. But every time I went in for um, that dopamine hit, I
Hmm.
later on, after realizing what the hell I was doing, I was asking myself, okay, what's wrong?
Hmm.
Why do you need this? And it's
Right.
funny because it was shopping.
Yeah.
um and shopping became like, it was like this huge addiction. Like, I was just constantly buying shit all the time, and that was a way to displace my emotions and my powerlessness, and it gave me the sense of power. I'm working for my money. Boom, I can get anything I want, and it was just like boom, boom, boom. And so
And
instead
so
of,
it's also visible to other people, right? Like it gives the allure to other people that you're accomplishing stuff and you're amassing some sort of wealth because you have these like expensive
yeah,
shoes and you have fancy car and you've got like, you got the beautiful wife and the kid and they're all dressed to the nines as well. So it gives that, not, I don't want to call it
yeah.
a facade or an illusion, because you do have a happy household, you got an amazing kid and
Mhm.
an amazing wife, but it pushes that to everybody else so that they don't necessarily see you struggling. They think you're doing amazing.
Yeah, exactly. So you're manipulating perception, because you are afraid that maybe something like your sadness or your anxiety inside is going to come out and define who you are in front of other people, which is something you don't want to do. You want to seem strong. You want to seem accomplished, and especially like, in this kind of corporate world and this kind of like stuff we do today, um, those kind of characteristics are what people have been teaching me. Like
Hmm.
thick skin, empathy is for the weak. Like,
Right.
all of these things, and so I started like, so I started doing this, and sure, that's one part of it, but for me, it was really that escape, that small escape that I had every time I was purchasing something or buying something. And what I did is I said, okay, every time I go for that checkout button,
Hmm.
or even now today, every time I go to the site, you know, I ask myself, okay, why are you here? Why are you
Okay.
here? Like browsing. Why the
Right.
hell are you here? Like, what's wrong? What do you need right
Okay.
now? you know.
Okay.
And for me, it's been for me, love's been solving everything.
Yeah.
And at that point, like, you know, maybe I'd go and just give my wife like a big solid hug, and I would, or with my dog Luna, you know, we'd go for a little
Yeah.
walk, and all of a sudden that need is no longer there, and
Right.
that's kind of like how I was able to kind of correct it. It's like you replace the habit, you know.
Yeah. And I remember when we were training together, I remember I was like, dude, why don't you get an animal? You're like, I'm not getting an animal. It's like, I'm not.
Yeah.
You're like, I'm not doing it. I
Yeah.
can't do it. I won't do it. And I was like, okay, all right. And then you
Yeah.
got it, and then you're like, yeah, I get it. Okay, yeah, this is a great.
Yeah.
this
Oh
is
yeah.
a great thing.
I want to quit everything I've ever done and just go save dogs.
It's crazy. It's crazy, right?
Yeah. Like yeah, it's totally crazy. I'm like gonna go redo my will now and be like part of my whatever is going to go to saving dogs all over the world. They're like so
Right.
great.
That's it. It's amazing how something that can't really talk or whatever just kind of centers you back into everything, because it makes you realize like what's most important, what you're lacking, right?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. There's a lot of and you know what, I probably don't give her enough credit, but she's definitely helped me as well, you know. Luna's been there for me. She's sitting right here beside me right now. You know,
she's your dog. She chose you. She's like, yeah, I'm your dog.
Yeah, and it's kind of put a lot of things into perspective as well. So.
Right. Okay. And then so another thing I wanted to talk to you about, because as far as I was concerned, you were like pretty much the most social media guy, best social media dude who like I ever had the convenience of, you know, coming into contact with. I was talking on another podcast with a couple of guys, and we were talking about the overtaking of social media and how it kind of, I don't think anybody really understood or still understands what social media does as far as how it takes from you. I think a lot of people look at social media in terms of, I'm sharing my life. Like I'm opening myself up. I'm cataloging or chronicling. But I know for me, when I kind of realized I don't really think that's how it is after you and me, we sat down in a cafe a couple times, we were training a couple times, and you gave me that whole document of like, okay, this is what you need to do. This is when you need to post. This is how you post. These are your, you need to make a calendar and all these options and opportunities. And I was in the midst of doing it, and I kind of started doing it, and then I stopped after a little bit, because I kind of had this like meditative self-reflection moment where I'm like, this doesn't feel like I'm working within like my life, the frame of my life. I feel like what I'm trying to do is create something that's like parallel or divergent of who I am.
Yeah.
And after talking to a certain amount of people, people in the fitness industry, other people who I know are pretty good on social media, there does seem to become this, at least in recent days, maybe because of the COVID and everything and people having to stay home. But there seems to be this thing where people are starting to kind of wake up to the realization that I think social media is taking a lot more from us than we actually realize. Like, I think it's eating up a large part of my life and creating a lot of anxiety, hesitation, angst, worry about, you know, who's looking at me, how am I being perceived. People are stop being their genuine selves and start being the person they think they have to be. So I know that you, especially your wife, you know, you guys are pretty well known. During your burnout, did you feel like this was also a thing? Do you feel like has it changed the way that you do social media now?
Oh yeah, 100%. First of all, I hate social media. I really do. And my nature, like as an early adopter and someone who tries to pioneer, has always kind of put me on the forefront of some of these things and kind of use them. Like, and so I jumped onto social media very early, even before I did. And so that's where I started using it and really using it to kind of like promote myself. I had a consulting agency that was doing pretty well, so I would use social media to kind of promote and also to show that like I got what it takes
Right.
to do yours. But I have to like kind of take a look back and see like the time frame of when I think I was at my worst, and see what I was putting on social. But I was probably not putting anything on social, but taking tons of content to put on social, and
Right.
that was like the problem. Like I would and I would see that I have like 20 photos in my drafts ready to go, but like I just couldn't have that courage, or I didn't feel like they were authentic enough to put up, and so I didn't, and so I slowed down a lot on social since. And for me personally, it is a source of anxiety.
Right.
It is, and the day I can just shut down all my social media completely, I think I'll be happy. But there's still part of me that clings on to financial opportunities that come upon, like
For sure.
so. For example, I hadn't posted for over a month, and I'm doing real good. And then all of a sudden, company calls me and says, "Hey, we'll give you $5,000 if you put a few posts, for us." And I'm thinking like, cool, let's do it. But now I got to go back in there, start putting content up, start getting the flow going, start doing
Right.
stories. But I'm not a content creator.
Yeah.
And it does get like my wife, she's like, for her, it doesn't cause her anxiety. Of course, she goes through like natural, like, is this good enough? This and that. But like, that's normal with anything you create. But for her, it's like very natural. She's been putting herself out there in some form of media since she's like a baby.
Yeah.
So it's very natural. She knows how to manage those emotions. But like
Right.
sometimes for someone like me, who's led like very private life before social, and as well, so have my parents and their parents, and we come from a private family moving
Yeah.
down the road, and it it kind of plays with your emotions a bit, to have to put stuff out there. So I hear you. Like it's a tough thing to do. It's a and the social channels, I feel like, are getting a little bit harder to work with these days.
Right.
They want more of your money in order to get things out. But it's part of life now.
Yeah.
Gabor Mate, who's like this phenomenal intellect, Canadian too, has got these great books about parenting, trauma, and stuff like that. And he says that he says that social media should be treated just like alcohol or sex.
Yeah.
Like you don't put those things in front of people that do not know how to manage the emotional stress and burdens that come along with it.
Right.
And so you need to know how to manage that. And like my wife, she's excellent at managing it. Myself, not at all. So when you do see a post of mine go up, it's quite a bit of emotional roller coaster that goes behind it.
There's a large thought process before that thing actually goes up. Yeah. Yeah, because for me, like when dealing with social media now, you're always at the forefront of my mind all the time. Like whenever I'm going and I'm thinking about, posting this or doing this, I'm like, in my head, I'm always like, okay, just remember, like, just think about, like, if you were Naeem, like, how would you attack this? How would you look at it? Is it worthwhile? Is it like, does it serve a purpose? The main thing that I've always asked myself before getting on social media or doing anything on social media, so that I don't feel like I get into that that situation, is what I'm posting, does it have a purpose? Because for me, what I'm really trying to use social media for is I'm trying to use it to further the business. I'm trying to further gyms I train at or something that I'm doing, offering a service or whatever. But I'm making sure that whatever it is that I am doing, there is a purpose behind it, so that I'm not looking at it purely for interaction or like any kind of, I don't know, like I'm not putting any emphasis into it more than this is just a necessary evil just to kind of deal with stuff. I post it up, I leave it alone, I move on with my day. There's no like, how many mentions, am I getting insights? Do I have enough followers? Like I'm just leaving it alone, and it's there. If people look at it, fantastic. If they don't, couldn't care less. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah. There's so many different approaches that you can take, and you'll get so many different opinions. You know, eventually if you get someone on this podcast talking to you about like social media and all the things you can do there, you're gonna get like tons of different answers that might be contrary to how we use it or how we believe, giving us a doubt of like, hey, are we using it properly? But I think as a central like component or element of using social media is that you need to make sure it matches your values and what you're able to deal with on an emotional level.
Right.
Don't go out of your way and do things that is going to give you like anxiety. And if you start seeing that the more you post, the more anxiety you get, the more sucked in you're getting into the social media channel, then maybe it's not for you and you're not using it correctly. So for you, if that's how it works, that's how it works. Someone else might come by and say, hey, Blake, you're not using it enough, you're not using it to your advantage.
I get that a lot. I get a lot of messages on Instagram where they're like, we could up this and do that. I'm like, man, I don't need it. I'm like, I just don't. It's just not who I am. I mean, like I'm very much like you. Like I'm a private person. Like I don't really have that much of a public persona. I don't know necessarily if I want a public persona. It's just I enjoy doing things and getting myself into doing things, and then I want to kind of leave it at that. And then whatever's taken from that, fine. But I don't find the need to do all these excessive extra things. Like I want it to live on its own. That's it. That's all. Of course, there are people who are good at everything. There are kids who make a living on YouTube opening like toys, and they're making tons of money, and they're good at it. Whether it's good for them or not, I don't know. Obviously, everybody's a little bit different. Like you said, your wife is exceptional at social media. She can handle it. She grew up in it. It's kind of like she's learned how to navigate those waters. Perfectly fantastic. I just know in my experience, I know what I'm capable of giving. I know how much of my battery I'm able to exhaust in that area. And for the rest, so I try my best not to exceed that and not to push that too much, because then I feel like I'm living in that world. I'm not living in this one. And especially when we have a child and you're in a relationship, you realize that the most important thing is making sure that energy that you need to keep that relationship healthy and keep that child happy is the energy that needs to be reserved no matter what. Everything else can kind of like almost fall to the wayside. But as long as those two things are good, everything else can work itself out.
Yeah, for sure. And like we're dealing with so many more things now, like you're dealing with multiple revenue streams. More and more people around me have multiple revenue streams that they're dealing with. So that creates like, layers of anxiety and stress. Then you're adding like these channels like social media and stuff. And it's not just like posting, it's managing a perception that you kind of like want to have and portray as well. So you're adding a layer there. Then we're coming home to, like worldwide news in our fingertips, like seeing injustices in front of our eyes every day. And then you're dealing with your family, you're dealing with like there's so many layers that we have. So I think it's ultimately important to understand what you're able to do and be able to push forward. And so like a huge activity that I love to do to myself. I redo it all the time. It's helped me a lot during this, my anxiety and stuff like that is to really zone in on what you're good at. And then make sure that overlaps with your passion. And then if those two things that are overlapping can make you living, then I think, right in that center point is where you should be focusing your time. And as soon as something starts to go outside of that Venn diagram, then you're starting to leave your core a little bit, and it's at that point maybe where you start developing anxiety and stuff like that.
Right.
And a lot of the people that are like extremely successful in what they've done is basically that they've been able to overlap their passion and what they're good at, focused on it alone, and were able to thrive. And then found ways that the world was able to pay them for what they've done.
Right.
There's a lot, like, there's a lot that, and I'm trying to go back to our main topic.
Oh, don't worry about it, dude. Just whatever
Yeah.
you go is wherever you go. Don't worry about it.
But there's a lot, like, anxiety is something that's pretty real. It kind of stays there all the time. You feel it in your stomach. I was dreading sleeping for months. Sleeping was like my nightmare. Like, that was the last place I wanted to be.
And was that because you didn't have a place to put your mind at night? Like, you couldn't let things shut down? Like, it just everything's just running a million miles an hour all the time?
Yeah, it's just running a million miles an hour all the time. Where little problems were turning into catastrophic pandemics. Stomach starts to get hard. And I was just like, fuck, I'm not going to sleep. I don't know why I'm here, and then you become sleep deprived, and your eating habit starts to shake, and that's just not healthy. It's like this crazy vicious circle. And of course, things like, meditating, and really taking it seriously, like not like meditating to say like you meditate, but like really making sure you're finding the right practices that help you, and talking to people about it, being open. Like my wife like barely saw any of this. Obviously she could say, yeah, he had a shopping problem,
Right.
but he's not making me pay for it, or he's got attitude with his son, but I guess all dads do. It's so easy to like just dismiss, and she didn't see it because it's like this slowly creeping kind of problem,
Right. She slowly became accustomed to it.
Yeah, every day, tiny bit, she has no idea. Whereas, I would go hang out with you and another one of our friends, and we go for lunch or something, and I'm just like frantic, and it's like, can't sit still, look, I'm going through a whole bunch of stuff in my mind, and then you reflect back and you're like, oh, damn, and it finally, when you say, okay, I need to kind of do something about this, is when you do it, and you got to know what the source is. You got to figure out what the source is, because you might be feeding it to yourself, so yeah.
And then so in dealing with this, how was the reinvention process for you? Like, how was it going from dealing with this to acknowledging the issue, starting to deal with the issue, and then kind of, because obviously, listen, like, you just can't stop working and then never work again, right? Like, you have to reintegrate yourself into a world, and you have to find a way of doing things. But so how was it for you to get yourself started again, rework yourself back in, and being able to live a new version of your normal life?
Well, I think I had to stop a lot of things fast and hard. That was the first step. So for me, like, the peak of all this was when I was working for this company, and it wasn't the work I was doing, it wasn't the people around me, it wasn't the fact that I wasn't not doing well. I was thriving in that role. The people around me were fantastic. It was not getting a clear understanding of my future. When you're working on your own stuff, you're able to set like kind of like a goal somewhere
Mhm.
and say,
Yep.
okay, that's where I'm going, and you get there. Even if you end up somewhere else, it's okay. You were the one who had that steering wheel. But now all of a sudden, it was like these like millionaires who've gone through their career already, who don't think about you in the evenings or weekends, who don't give a shit about what you're doing, and they got your steering wheel to your life now
Right.
just because of this power they hold, just because of this like fixed salary they're giving you every couple of
Mm-hmm.
weeks. I was like, no, I can't do that. And
Mm.
so at first they had the steering wheel, but they were telling me, hey, we're going here. And they're like, cool, I'm going there too. This is
Right.
great. And then all of a sudden there's a U-turn that's taken. You're speeding up, you're slowing down, other passengers are coming into the car, and you're just like, what's happening? And they're
Right.
like, don't worry about it. And at one point, don't worry about it is like, no, I am going to worry about it. This is my life,
Right.
And so it was at that point where I said, okay, there was like a final straw. Uh, Someone barged into my office and in front of a floor of employees that, respected me and that I respected. And I worked really hard to make their jobs delightful by creating a
Right.
successful product over the
That's
last
it.
2 years, and he's just yelling on top of his lungs at me, and I'm staring at this and I'm thinking, damn, I don't remember the last time a grown man has yelled at me like this.
Since I broke my dad's broke
Yeah,
something and my dad just screamed at me. Yeah, I don't get yelled at like that.
I don't I'm like, I didn't know how to deal, and like part of me was gonna break down and start crying immediately in that moment.
Mm-hmm.
Part of me was going to roundhouse back kick him right in the jaw, which I'm very capable of doing.
Yes, you are.
And I just kind of packed my bag and just walked right out and never went back.
Right.
And I only went back about a month later to collect my things, and everyone's looking at me with like these puppy eyes, like,
Like, come back,
you know,
come back. I want you
no,
back.
man, not come back, no, not at all. Like, are you sick? We feel for you. Like this kind of
Mm.
like weird, like,
Mm-hmm.
and I was
Did it
like,
feel like disingenuous, like when you were there?
man, no, I don't think so. It's hard to say. A lot of people don't know how to manage that kind of emotion as well,
For
when it goes
sure.
outward. So, you can't judge them for it. But
Mm-hmm.
just like on the inbound of it, it's like, all these people are feeling sorry for you, but like that's not what you thrive on at all. Like, so
Right.
it was so awkward. And so like I left, and I remember we kind of met up at one point, and I was like, I don't know what I'm gonna do.
Yeah.
You know,
No, yeah.
I don't know what I'm gonna do. Like I had this like shopping addiction that was going crazy at that point.
Mm-hmm.
And it was just like purchasing a whole bunch of shit I didn't need at all.
Mm.
And I was lost. And so slowly I started just kind of chopping things down. It took me a little bit of time. And what happened is leaving this role in the way I did caused more anxiety and stress.
Okay.
I felt bad for people that were there, and all that. But eventually, I was able to slowly cut a lot of these things out and started focusing on exactly where my passion and energy wanted to go.
Right.
And at that point, it was like, put more attention to the festivals. And so my business partner, like, agreed, kind of agreed to something where I was working on a very specific project for the festivals and kind of developing a team there, which was easy. And then at the same time, I came up with this idea that I've always had for a new business,
Mm-hmm.
and I started focusing my energy there. And slowly, I started just taking things at my own pace, kind of grabbing back that steering wheel. And of course, mindfulness helps a lot. all that meditation stuff. And I think even I used to work out a lot with you, and
Mm-hmm.
I realized that the source of my working out was to release like frustration.
For sure.
And so I felt like that, it's just a great way to do it, but I didn't want it to be for that anymore.
For
You
sure.
know,
You gotta
I didn't want, yeah.
No. Yeah. Go. Keep going.
No, so I started dabbling into these things, started reading, I started educating myself. I was kind of like, taking some classes and things like that, and just like reflecting a lot on like where I
Mm-hmm.
was, and started kind of mashing up all these learnings I've taken and started applying them and seeing the results kind of come immediately. And it's been a slow process, and like some days I deal with it more than not, than less still, obviously. But it's better, because for
Mm-hmm.
me personally, I needed to have my hands on that steering wheel, and I have it on the steering wheel. Like
Yeah.
COVID was terrible for me, like and of it,
I can
um,
imagine. You're two very social people. Like you guys do a lot and are very
well,
involved in a lot of things. So.
when I was young, I was very I was extroverted. I was,
Mm-hmm.
and social. As I became older, I become a lot more introverted, and I am an introvert. That's definitely what I would say today. But it was less so the connection with people, but like even like our business. Like I can't DJ anymore.
Yes, that's
I,
true.
she
That's
had like a
true.
summer loaded with weddings and big corporate gigs, and she can't.
Mm-hmm.
She's not making a penny.
That's right.
I had just left October 2019. I had left that job that I
Mm-hmm.
was at, and that whole end of the year, I was just trying to like fix myself.
Right.
Comes into January, I'm like, okay, I'm going full in on these restaurant festivals. I'm going full on this on DineTab, which is an app for the restaurant industry.
Right. Yeah.
And then March comes, and you're like, damn,
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
I said, okay, well, here's a, imagine going like the entire year till now with no income,
Yeah.
uh, working on these new startups, working on what you're doing, and trying to, and I think that was a blessing for us. It was a blessing for me, actually. I got to slow down. I got to understand what's important in life, what we need. I was able to self-reflect on triggers that were telling me that I was going in the wrong direction, and change that course of direction. And that sacrifice kind of paid off, where I feel like I'm in a good place. Almost more than a year after the climax of my burnout.
Yeah. And yeah, and I'm very happy for you because I love you. I see you like a brother and everything. And
Yeah, for sure, man. For
I'm
sure,
happy.
absolutely.
I'm happy to see that because even when we were training together, I think I told you a couple times, I'm like, listen, dude, if you don't want to do this, like, I'm not going to be the one who sits here and be like, no, we got to train 2-3 times a week, whatever. Like, I knew
Yeah.
that for you, it was a release. It was a release that you needed to be able to get out that frustration and energy that you had building up, losing that control or doing whatever, and gaining some control over your body again gave you like a little bit of relief. But yeah, at some point, like even when we talked about, you're like, I just don't know if working out, whatever. I was like, dude, if it's not, it's cool, man. Just find something that you can put your energy into that just makes you happy.
The working out with you was like the best part of my day for that entire period of time.
Mm-hmm.
Like all of that, it was pushing my physical boundaries,
Mm-hmm.
which like, which was amazing. I think I was able to do a pull-up after a year. It was fantastic. Yeah, Blake has photos. We'll share it.
Yeah.
But working out is so key. Like being able but I wanted everything I did
Mm-hmm.
to have this kind of authentic and genuine purpose that
Mm-hmm.
wasn't to defer anything
What you were
else.
feeling. Yeah.
Yeah, it wasn't to compensate for the lack of something.
Makes sense.
You know,
Makes
like
total
that silly
sense.
example where like I'm about to check out on like, you know, something that I do not need.
Mm-hmm.
Pause, go get like a really nice hug from my wife and kiss my kid on the cheek, and all of a
Yeah,
sudden that need is no longer there. You
that's it.
know,
Mm-hmm.
working out was probably like it was therapy. It was definitely therapy, and without it, I would have been in a lot worse of a state. That's for sure.
Yeah. Well, even when you said you were taking up martial arts again and you're doing it with your kid, I was like, there you go. That's exactly
Yeah.
what you needed. Like, it's something you loved, it's something you did, it's something that you find confidence in, you're good at it. Like,
Hmm.
that's gonna take you and keep your mind on a level where it needs to be. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? So it's like
Yeah.
I was just happy that I could take part in kind of getting you forward and realizing that, like, you can find that balance in something else than just your professional career, as
Hmm.
opposed to, you had some
Hmm.
other way of kind of like balancing your life out, which is what I think that
Hmm.
we as trainers try to do, is try to make you realize that you may lose scope of a lot
Hmm.
of other things in life, but if you can kind of gain back that physical attribute or that physical power that you have, you can bring yourself back to some level of balance. You can
Yeah.
find worthiness in yourself of doing something else. You know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely. And I think that you go from like a boy to a man in a way when the reason why you do things
Mm-hmm.
is for yourself versus others.
That's right.
So
Yeah.
if you're working out constantly just to kind of prove something to others, if you're buying things all the time just to be swagging in a way for others, if you're working hard and doing all kinds of things to make money and whatever, and it's just for others. I'm not saying all of these things was myself, but um, some of them were. And once you're able to say, okay, first of all, nobody gives a shit.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody gives a shit. Okay.
Yeah.
Everyone's got their own problems. Nobody gives a shit about your stuff.
That's
Nobody gives a
right.
shit about what you're doing. You might get a comment here and there and blow up your ego, but it's not even genuine,
Yeah,
you
that's it.
know? And once you start doing things for yourself and for the people you care about, like your family, that's when I think you really grab that steering wheel. You start
Mm-hmm.
to have a little bit more control on where you're going. Taking a wrong turn is not about hurting yourself or beating on yourself for taking the wrong turn, but it's an understanding of now you got to live with this new choice that you've taken to take this direction. It really helps, like your mind. Really helped me a lot with my anxiety,
Mm-hmm.
and it's just unnecessary pressure in the end.
Yeah. And I think that's an important thing to kind of, I guess, to kind of end on, is just, at least in my experience in the corporate world, is that it seems like it's, once you make one wrong decision, that's it. Like, you've been thrown to the wayside, you're gone, forget about it. On to the next proponent. And life is just not like that. Life is so much of trying to quantify your failures into something that is going to teach you how to be a better
Hmm.
version of yourself, and learning how to not,
Absolutely.
like, you always want to kind of be cautious and you want to be mindful of what you're doing,
Hmm.
to try to eliminate the fear of doing the wrong thing,
Hmm.
as long as your mind's in a good scope of, like, I'm trying to achieve this, may not get there, but we may fail, but what can we learn from the failure to do it when I go back at it next time? I can fix that problem, and I've got that first-hand experience, so that I really
Hmm.
know how to deal with it, as opposed to listening or trying to study something from somebody else about how to do things. Because very much, I think a lot of anxiety, especially from what we get to today, and even being taught in school, is that we're taught in a very linear fashion. Like,
Hmm.
only this results in only this. So if you want
Hmm.
this, this is the way you're going to have to go about to getting it. When in
Hmm.
fact, once we actually get into the working world and we start doing things for ourselves, it's all kinds of different things that end up getting into that one area. And that a lot of the time, when we see that there are people whom are very much adverse to doing things in a different manner. It's just because they either didn't have the confidence into try something in a different manner, or they've just never seen it done in that fashion. And I think very much a lot of forward-thinking people who we end up emulating and, you know, basically taking their design and creating the blueprint is people whom are not driven necessarily by the things that they're taught, but by the experiences that they have, and trusting in the process of, I'm going to go at this full bore 100%. I'll see where I fail. I'll see where I fuck up. I'll back it up. I'll start again. And I'm just going to keep going forward. And regardless of whomever or whatever is going to say whatever they're going to say, we're just like, I'm just going to keep towing the line and I'm going to make this shit happen.
Yeah. You know, and you're right. For me, you know, what you're saying hits home for sure. And I think a really great exercise to do as well is for anybody who's kind of dealing with anxiety or you know, I don't want to say depression, because it's a whole other ball game, but like you know, feeling down, anxiety, pressure from places they don't know how to manage. And an exercise that I did and I keep doing now more and more is kind of like jot down your path, you know, you know, write it down. And we hit multiple tipping points every time. So, you know, write down, if you're talking about your career, write down one of the first things that you felt led you into that career, and then where that career led you and where that experience has led you, and then kind of like understand the failures that were there that were bringing you down, causing you anxiety, and see today now how those failures have created who you are as a person, has propelled you into successes later on because of the learnings. And then you're able to kind of see this track that you've been taking, and you start to have respect for the journey. And and you need to also respect the mini wins as much as the failures. You know, sometimes like this tiny little win, which just could be a door that opened or something, could, the more you celebrate those, the more you attract them into your life, the more you bring it, the more you're putting less stress on yourself, you know, and you're respecting that you are moving in a direction that you want to go into. And so I think mapping it out, seeing that journey, self-reflecting, putting down like what you love doing, what you're passionate about, making sure those two things overlap. There's so many of these like self-reflection activities that you can do that help you understand who you are, what you deserve in this world, where you can go, the power you have, the control you have. And that just kind of like lets you breathe, you know? And
100%.
Kind of,
100%. All right, dude. Well, listen, I very much appreciate you taking time out to come on. I appreciate you opening up and talking to it, because I think it's going to help a lot of people who are experiencing a lot of things that you've experienced, you know, especially high functioning people who have a real, like, you know, go-getter mentality, who don't like to feel like they're being let down or letting people down. I think it's very important for them to hear the message from somebody who's, you know, gone to such heights and then had to like recalibrate and reevaluate what was important to them, so that they could balance their life out and live a happy life, as opposed to just a successful one.
Yeah.
So,
and there's different levels for everyone. Just a quick story before we hang up. Like,
yeah, for sure.
One of my investors for DineTab was telling me a story the other day, because you know, I kept telling him, I'm working, you know, or like, he's like, you got to slow down, because here, let me tell you a quick story. For the first 4 years of his daughter's life, he was working so hard, so much, and he was just like hustling like crazy, that there was a death in the family and they went to a funeral, and he made it to the funeral, and his 4-year-old daughter was there and did not recognize him.
Oh, that's got to eat his heart, like right out of his chest.
They didn't recognize him.
That's got to be so bad.
And it took him that crazy experience to realize that he was...
I'm not doing this for the right reasons.
He was not doing it for the right reasons. What does the money mean? Who am I pleasing? Are they the most important people in my life?
Yeah.
All of these things, and it comes down to making sure you're doing stuff for you. And when you're good,
Right.
the people around you are going to be good.
And things are going to start getting good. Yeah.
Right.
All right, dude. Appreciate you so much. You know I love you.
I love you too, Blake. Thanks so much.
All right,
Thanks for
bro.
the opportunity.
I
Real
appreciate
pleasure.
it, kid. Post.
We'll talk soon.
All right. Well, that's been